think you really just have to follow the money. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves, even more in Saudi Arabia. But who is the number one client? It's China. What's really going on, forget all the conspiracy theories, etc. As you know, I was called in to do the peace plan with Russia. And I was actually told, I think I changed the narrative. And they said, okay, fine, you're right. We're not going to be at war with Russia. It's China. So I think largely Venezuela, the major issue is geopolitical again. And it's largely, I think, to deal with China. They really seem to think that the war we're going to have is with China rather than Russia. And I've gotten that from numerous sources in D.C., not just one. And then you have to understand, Trump's waiting for the Supreme Court to see what he's going to say on his sanctions. The Constitution gives the authority of tariffs to Congress, all right, not to the president. He has been using this emergency statute to do his tariffs, and that's what the Supreme Court's going to be ruling on, all right? Now, in order to do that, all right, there has to be a national security issue. So the issue that he has been citing is drugs. Okay, so he's done that with fentanyl, with China, Venezuela. This is all, the drugs gives him the authority under his interpretation. So that's what the Supreme Court's going to be ruling about. But that's why, you see the things with the drug boats and all that, all that sort of stuff. It's basically related to the statute that he's using. So he's going to be saying something.
So, not to interrupt you, but so is that setting up, so is the drug boats and all that in Venezuela, in your view, setting up the narrative so he can justify these tariffs under what you just explained for a national security issue? And then my second question is, what if the Supreme Court shoots it down and says these tariffs, you can't do it?
That's the $64 billion question. But he has used, it's the drugs, the fentanyl, which he has used against China. All right. You have Rand Paul, who was trying to push through some legislation to prevent Trump from invading Venezuela without congressional approval. But it's the drugs that he's using for the jurisdiction to do this. Okay, whether it's right, wrong, indifferent, if it's really a national threat, that's all debatable. All right. But the bottom line is Venezuela has the largest oil reserves, period. And I would not put it past the fact that what you're looking at is, every American energy company is probably greasing as many hands as they possibly can to get their fingers into that pie. I know people think it's London stuff. I mean, come on, it's much more serious than that. And he's using the drugs as the excuse under that statute, and it's geopolitical. I mean, it's. From what I have heard, they think it's China, not Russia, that is the threat. And China is the number one client of Venezuela.
So it'd be cutting them off. It'd be not only be cutting China off and from a global geopolitical chess, and also it would be kicking them out of the region or hurting them in
Right.
the region.
If you look at what he's done, Panama, the canal, etc., this is what I call reasserting the Monroe Doctrine in a way. Nobody's allowed to come to North America or South America with, be it China or Russia or Europe or whatever. So it is definitely a geopolitical issue here. I know people, London's got really nothing to do with it. London is more the, from Trump's perspective, it's becoming the Antichrist, They got Boris Johnson running over there. Zelensky's all meeting in London. In the peace proposal that I was asked to do, I laid out all the facts. I said, look, Russia is not the enemy. The enemy is actually the EU. And I think I changed the narrative. When I was asked, I was surprised to be called in to do that. All right. And I think largely because Trump is to a large extent surrounded by neocons. You take Rubio, for example. You look it up, you'll see that Rubio, when he was in the Senate, is the one who put in the act that Trump cannot exit NATO without his permission.
Did you freeze up on me, Martin? Freeze up?
Says.
Oh, you froze up for a second. So what Rubio said that he could not leave NATO without permission?
He put in an act through Congress or through the Senate there that says that the president cannot exit NATO without congressional approval. I think it's unconstitutional because just as I said, the Constitution gives the tariffs to Congress, but it gives the right to negotiate treaties to the president. And Congress, the Constitution says, he negotiates it, and Congress just gives its assent. They do not have the power to negotiate treaties. That's the presidential power. So, you have these neocons in there, and you take, Besant, most people don't realize, all right, fine, they've heard that he worked for Soros. What they don't know is he was the brains, not Soros. He's the one that sold the British pound trade to Soros. It made Soros famous. All right. He stayed with Soros until about 2000, after they lost about $2 billion on the Russia deal, which everybody then blamed me for. But if you look at what he says, he's not out there advocating peace. He doesn't advocate endless wars, but I think you're looking at the same nonsense that I was in the middle of before when they asked me to put in $10 billion into Hermitage Capital, and I'd get $100 billion back, and they were looking at taking over Russia. And Russia's got it's the richest country in the world with natural resources. It's estimated their natural resources are worth about $75 trillion, which is twice the size of U.S. national debt. All right. Now, this is why Europe wants war with Russia. They are on the ropes themselves, and instead of reforming, they want war with Russia. And they, when Trump came out and with that sarcastic remark, Oh, Russia's a paper tiger. Ukraine, you can get all your land back and get more. He was being sarcastic. That is what NATO's telling people. NATO's out there telling them that they have 3.4 million soldiers against Russia's 1.5. Make it sound like we can just walk in, Putin will fall to his knees and beg for his life. All right. First of all, what's included in that 3.4 is the United States and Canada. All right. You just had Representative Massey put in a bill to exit NATO. When I was in these meetings, I like I said, I was surprised to be called in, and because I thought, they know what my position is, and I've said, at least, the last couple of years, get the hell out of NATO. And the last meeting I had, I was very surprised because I don't pull any punches. I say what it is. And they actually said, yes, we know, we agree. So, and now you just had Massey introduce a bill to exit NATO. I mean, they are going, I've warned them, they're going to do a false flag to invoke Article 5 to try and drag us into their damn war with Russia. And I've been doing everything I can to say, stay the hell out. I just reported that behind closed doors, there were people in the EU actually proposing to dump $2.3 trillion worth of U.S. debt if Trump does any kind of a deal with Putin. They think that they can create a 2008 bond crisis in the United States, as punishing us for not going to war when they want us to go to war. I mean, it's the EU is not going to survive. It's on its last legs, and this is why they need war. So the Venezuela thing, I think, is largely economic. I don't have confirmation, but I would certainly bet that every energy company is greasing every palm they possibly can to get their hands on Venezuela. We'll see how that shapes up, but I think that's really the main issue, and to cut off China. I don't think it's got anything to do with London or anything else.
Do you think push comes to shove, there'll be conflict in Venezuela? Because it's like you always hear about these scenarios, and then nothing ever comes to fruition. And what I think is funny, before you answer that, what I think is funny now in the digital world that we live in, I don't know how much active you are on X, but you'll see people post of reported lights out in Venezuela, reported F-16s heading towards Venezuela, like all this, and I'm like, I don't believe that we're going to know, us users on these platforms, when a military strike is about to occur. But this is the world that we live in today. So do you see this will actually come to fruition, a conflict down there?
Normally, yes. Congress is trying to muster support to prevent him from doing so. So it's a tug of war back and forth. But look, the motives are clearly economic. You get a hold of all the gold, all the oil reserves. You don't need the Middle East anymore. All right, and it's the biggest reserve in the world. You got more than Saudi Arabia, and you cut off China. I mean, why you got to bring in, London and boats and stuff like? I mean, that's all just peripheral nonsense, really. The major issues are simply, it usually ends up being money.
They have the largest. Venezuela has the largest gold reserves. Is that what you said?
Oil.
Oh, oil reserves. Oh. What happens then if well, first of all, why has it taken so long for the Supreme Court to rule on these tariffs?
It's expedited. Some think they may come out before the end of the year. Uh, Normally, it's in this term. It would be released no later than June 30th next year, but it has been granted expedited status. So they could do it, before the year end because it's an important issue, or I would think in the first quarter.
What it appears in some of Trump's posts that he doesn't believe he's going to get the support. It's going to get shot down. What do you think is going to happen?
I would say that his use of that statute, if I'm sitting on the court, I'd probably have to rule against him.
And if so, then what? What if is it? What impact will it have on the agenda?
That will be interesting because I suppose he could still go after Venezuela and drugs, separate and distinct from the tariffs statute that he's been using. Under national security, it's largely his prerogative.
But would you have to pay back the money then that they collected in tariffs? This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffee and a mic.
That it could be very well true. I mean, that would be up to the Supreme Court. They could say, all right, we're saying no, you can't do this going forward, but not that it was totally unconstitutional, so you don't have to refund. If they throw the whole thing out and say it was unconstitutional, then in theory you're supposed to return the money.
Have to issue billions of dollars, right? They've collected in.
It's judges tend to be, at least at this level here in U.S., they tend to be more practical. Unlike like British Columbia, all right? Oh, yes, okay, fine. All the Indians really own the land. I've got clients there. You just had a brain-dead court decision. I have people there that have houses, and now they can't sell them because the land's owned by Indians. So does the Indian own the house? I mean, it's absurd. I mean, from a practical standpoint, you got to be out of your mind to even contemplate investing in BC. I mean, come on. I mean, that decision was so far remote from. So why don't we just say, okay, fine, we invaded North America, so the Indians own all the land in the United States. I mean, come on. Well, I mean, what's the reality of what you've just decided? It's just absurd. I mean, how far do we go back? Oh, let's see. We can. Sweden occupied Russia, so should they pay reparation payments because of what they did in the 1600s? I mean, where do you stop?
So we've talked about Venezuela. What's at the top of your list right now in terms of significance or importance?
I think you're going to see um, Europe is in such desperate straits here. Um, I think they're going to do some sort of a false flag. You just had the Italian admiral, who's the chair there in NATO, come out and said that NATO is now justified to attack Russia as a preemptive strike for hacking or something. I mean, it's to even say that again. It's you obviously want World War III. It's like, oh well, somebody hacked my computer, so I think it was Russia, so let's bomb them. I mean, hello, how many European lives are they willing to sacrifice? They don't. They really don't give a shit. Ukraine, really? You really care about the Ukrainian people? All right. Everyone I speak to, if Zelensky was on fire, they wouldn't urinate on him until he was dead. I mean, he is not interested in peace. He runs off to London and takes his orders from the UK and Macron. He won't have an election because he knows he'll lose. We had World War I and World War II. U.S., Britain, we didn't suspend elections. Where's this bullshit come from? USSR? He has suspended all democratic process because he is a dictator, period. Look, even Putin stands for election. Whether you want to call it, real, not real, at least he had something. Okay? Zelensky doesn't even do one.
Are you surprised that Trump, almost a year in, has not been able to negotiate a ceasefire?
No, I've warned them that Russia is not your problem. Russia wants peace. Look, when I was called in and asked to do this proposal, I asked, first of all, is this sanctioned? I was told yes. They know I have contacts worldwide, and they actually asked me, we would like you to use your back channels. I said, you want me to do this? They said yes. I said, okay, fine. I got the proposal on Putin's desk. And 2 days later, Lavrov came out. You can look it up. He said, Russia is willing to guarantee we will not invade NATO. What NATO say? Oh, they're lying. I would say that at least the people that I've been talking to, they know where I stand and they seem to be agreeing. Being called in on a one-on-one basis is a surprise. I will say that I was also shown Putin turned over the KGB file on the JFK assassination. It was about that thick. And at the end of the meeting, what they did say to me was, you do know what we're asking you to do is what they killed JFK for. I said, yes, I know. But like I said, what I get is, yes, you're right. We're not going to be at war with Russia. It is China. China knows this is its time. I can say that economically, China has been, uh, they adopted the U.S. model, not Europe. Um, so they're trying to build a consumer-based economy, and that's why they're already the number 2 economy in the world and will surpass the United States if they haven't in many other areas. And look, I find they were both communist, but different. Um, Stalin was very paranoid. Children were taught in school that if your parent ever said anything against the state, report them. And one guy did, they made him into a national hero. Um, so Stalin's paranoia, besides the Great Purge and everything else and killing millions, he killed anybody that he thought might even think about removing him. I have one friend who grew up in East Germany, and the day the wall fell down, his father was able to go get his Stasi file. And then all of a sudden he saw everybody he thought were friends were ratting on him. He came home, he started punching holes in the wall. He said he thought his father lost his mind, and he's pulling out microphones. This was, Stalinist, communism. China was different. All right. China, they didn't care what you said to your wife. But if you stuck your head up and you were talking to the guy next door, that's what they called the tall poppy syndrome. That poppy gets its head cut off. Okay, so effectively, China didn't follow Marx to the letter. Whereas in Russia, they went after religion. Religion's the opium of the people, because Marx said so, that sort of thing. So Russia was basically tearing the family unit apart, dividing it. China didn't do that. So my observation from both places is that that's why China was able to boom faster than Russia. People, once they were free, their entrepreneurship, exploded, etc. Whereas Russia, you went from communism to oligarchy, and then begrudgingly to a democracy, so to speak, or a republic. Whereas China didn't go in that direction.
The question I have in regards to that, because to what you said with China being, they're listed as communists, but they've adapted many American ways in terms of corporations, right? And they also, that government seems to be much more efficient in infrastructure, and I've never been there, but they seem to be much more efficient in use of government resources than, say, the United States.
Yes, look, you have to understand Asian culture.
Have you been all over, Martin? You've been to Japan, you've been to China, Thailand?
I've lived in Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, London,
Taiwan?
Tokyo.
You've been to Taiwan?
Yeah, it's pretty much any place where there was a financial center I got dragged into. China is not communist, but you have to understand the Asian culture. All right, you've probably heard about saving face. If they changed the name of the party, then they would have to take Mao's picture down and said he was all wrong. All right, so China if you actually look it up, you'll see that China began to see that communism wasn't working. And in 1978, they started allowing some corporate ownership. That's when it really began. Tiananmen Square, it was not the beginning, it was the end. So they were giving little bit by little bit of freedom economically because they saw that's what worked. Tiananmen Square kind of erupted like, you've given this to everybody else, it's our turn. So it was not that it was the first thing, it was more or less the last thing. And that's why they oppressed it, etc. But so China is probably got more billionaires than we have. It's not communist by any shape of the term. Communism means the government owns stuff. They don't own it. All right. They just don't change the name. That's all. They start calling it more authoritarian, perhaps. But I would say my experience in running around the world, in Europe, I would have to explain that cycles existed. When I went to Asia, I never did because it's part of their religion. So China actually does think long term, not short term. And to a large extent, maybe that is beneficial. Our politicians tend to be, well, I'm not concerned about 20 years from now. I just got to win the next election. That's it. Whereas they have long-term plans. And it's not seen that, oh, I got to do this simply because I got to run for an election next week. It's a bit different. More authoritarian, but the difference, I think, is the focus is on the benefit to China. Whereas if you look at what's going on in our situation, if Trump says the sky's blue, they have to come out and say, no, it's red. It doesn't matter if it's blue. They have to oppose whatever the opposition says, regardless if it's good, bad, or indifferent. All right. I'm here in Tampa. The military base here was what is basically oversees the Middle East. Trump's first term, all right, he set up a team here to figure out how to get out of Afghanistan. All right, Biden comes to power. Oh, Trump hired them? They're all fired. It doesn't even look at the plan. If whatever Trump did, we have to do the opposite. Who gives a shit about the country? So then, just exit. He had no plan. Complete disaster. All right. That's what I mean about the politics. The politics in Europe and in the United States has turned into such a polarized nonsense. And that it's not just one side. I mean, whatever the Democrats did to Trump, he gets in. Now it's my turn to do it to you.
It's like a pro wrestling match, Martin. Like we're in right now.
Exactly. Whatever you do to the opposition, they're going to come back and do it to you. Just do the right thing.
I want to ask you two things about China. As a citizen, can you criticize their government if you live there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the only thing they seem to be really sensitive about is the Taiwan issue. Um, look, we have offices there. We're not barred. We have clients there that attend the conference virtually. Um, when we were opening an office there, look, our computer said China was going to rise, so we said, all right, fine. Look, that's going to be a major economy, and we have to be there. So we decided to open up an office. And Arnold, our guy, he's Chinese and he's in charge of it. He gets called in by the head of security and police for China. Not a clerk, the head. We were all like, oh shit, what the hell does this mean? I'm sure he was shitting his pants. He gets there and it's the head of all security for China. And he says, oh, so you know Mr. Armstrong? Yes. So what's he say about China? And that was it. Like I say, I think, maybe because of in Asian culture, the emperor used to be the representative of God. All right. So when communism came, and the same thing in Japan, that status seemed to me that it transferred to the government. So I saw it in Tokyo, and I said, look, the stock market's going to crash. Oh, you don't understand. The government says they're not going to allow that to happen. I said, I don't care what the government says, the Nikkei is going to crash. It was more or less the government, God said this. You know what I mean? So I watched companies lose a shitload of money because of that. In China, I think when the 97 Asian currency crisis took place, the Bank of China called me in. I wanted to go see the Great Wall. Okay, great. Let me see what this is like.
I think I asked you last time. Is it cool?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time. And what was funny was the people, the reason they called me rather than an academic is because the people I met at the central bank all had experience. They were sent out before, and they worked on the dealing desk in New York, Tokyo, London, and then went back to run the bank. So then it made sense. They're calling me in because they're traders. And so the funny part was when I did get back, the Treasury called me, and so the Fed. Oh, gee, what was it like? You're the first one. And I just stuck the knife in the back and I turned it. I said, very interesting. They only hire people with experience. As opposed to, in Washington, I meet more PhDs that can't chew gum and walk down the street at the same time. It's no experience whatsoever. You get that with all these politicians. They have no idea of what they're actually doing. Sounds good, and they just put up this bullshit and off we go. Trump, I disagree with him on the interest rate stuff. He's a borrower. He's not a lender. Oh, I want the interest rates down, down, down. Sorry, do a correlation. Interest rates rise during boom times. Interest rates decline during recession. I hate to tell you, interest rates 29, 6% to 1% didn't stop the market from crashing. 08, 09, interest rates collapsed. Let's get real here. I mean, don't listen to the talking heads on TV. Oh, interest rates went up so the stock market go down. Really? Interest rates went up all throughout Trump's first term. Just call up a chart of the Federal Reserve, rate. They called it the Trump rally. Stock market rallied with higher interest rates. What they don't get is if you think the stock market's going to double next year, you'll pay 20% interest. But if you don't think it's going to go up 1%, you're not going to borrow at 1%. It's it's not the empirical level of interest rates. We've done studies on that. I mean, the stock market's never peaked with the same level of interest rates twice. Come on.
What happens then with Taiwan? Will China just play the long game and just over time slowly work their way in?
I think, look, to tell you the truth, the Biden administration screwed that all up as well. And specifically, it was the neocons led by Blinken. All right, you had Nancy Pelosi hop on a plane, go to Taiwan. Oh, stand up for your freedom. Really? Okay. You had John McCain saying that, oh, in Maidan, overthrow your government. This is all about you. It's about peace. Where have they ever gotten peace ever since? It's all bullshit. All right. We had basically agreed Taiwan was part of China. All right. As long as we agreed with that, the one China policy, they didn't have to go in. Once you start saying, Taiwan, you're separate, you stand up for your rights, we're with you, now they have to. You've just insulted China. And eventually they have to go in. Simple as that. It's a saving face type thing. As long as, yes, it's really part of China, then they don't have to. If you don't understand these cultures, you should get the hell out of the business and keep your mouth shut. And Blinken is he's just a ruthless neocon in my book.
Isn't it funny you never hear from him anymore? Him or Mayorkas, or they've all just disappeared?
Because they're all basically pulling the strings behind the curtain. But we look at the Blink, look at him. Victoria Nuland and Garland. Look at their backgrounds. All three claim to come from the Balkan area. All three claim that their personal families were persecuted by Russians. How do three people with the same historical background end up in the same administration? It was Blinken that removed Russia from the SWIFT system. Once he did that, what happened? He even threatened China. If you help Russia, we'll do the same to you. An absolute idiot. All he cares about is war, not the economics. He doesn't understand anything. That's my opinion. All right. I created BRICS. You threatened China. Oh, you do that and we'll remove you from SWIFT. India, we're not going to put up with that shit. BRICS has got nothing to do with gold or the dollar or whatever. It's geopolitical. Once Blinken used the dollar as a weapon and the SWIFT system as a weapon, that was it. You had Obama went to SWIFT in 2014 when Russia went into Crimea. He called SWIFT and said, I want you to remove them from the SWIFT system. The SWIFT said, no, you're not turning this into a weapon. So what did they do? They replaced the head of SWIFT in 2019. He does whatever he's told. They've totally destroyed the world economy. Completely.
What, as long as we're in Asia, what is your level of concern with Japan and the carry trade?
Again, you got to pick up the rug a little bit. Um, Japan, fine, it's listed as one of the largest holders U.S. debt. Great. However, if you pick up the rug, you'll see it's Japanese corporations using U.S. debt as a hedge against their own government. Japan even bragged that they bought 97% of their own auction. Japan is economically, Japan is going to go into default. And let me say, look closer, you'll see all the Japanese companies are buying U.S. debt, not Japanese. Some of these people in like in Japan, even the EU, they get to be drunk on power. It's the only thing I can explain. That they are, look, I've warned governments. I said, do you realize that you will collapse when nobody buys the new debt? And yeah, but we're different. We're the government, and they act as if they'll be there forever. I said, if that's the case, then we'd all be speaking Babylonian, wouldn't we? Every government. Just look at the list. They're all buried in a common grave, and all for the same reasons: arrogance and whatever.
So, do you see this coming to fruition then soon in Japan, and what will the impact be in the United States?
Well, I think you're going to see 2026 starting it. This is what our computer's projecting into 2032. I think Europe is probably going to try to do the worse this gets, the higher the probability they're going to stage war with Russia. They need a diversion. As you know, they came to me to create the euro. And I said, look, you want to create a currency to compete with the dollar. And it wasn't a European idea. This started with Jim Baker at the Plaza Accord, because the dollar went up so high. He was the one that told Europe you should unite one currency to compete against the dollar, so the dollar doesn't go up astronomically all the time. So that was really the instigation of the euro. Then I told them, look, you want to compete with the dollar, you have to consolidate the debt. And that's when I said Helmut Kohl was Chancellor of Germany, and he said no consolidation. He admitted before he died that if he let the German people vote, he would have lost 7-3. Now, why is Europe so vulnerable? Our banking system, the reserves of the bank are federal debt. They're not using the debt of California or Illinois or something, some local town. Europe, they don't have that. Because there's no debt consolidation, the reserves of all the banks is a cornucopia of the debt of all the member states. So when Greece got into trouble in 2010, you make a lot of money shorting that one. All the traders immediately said, who's next? Okay, and then You just had the two ministers, one of UK, one of France, admit they might need an IMF bailout. Okay. All it's going to take at this stage in the game is a rumor that France is going to default. Doesn't even have to. All right. What will happen? Immediately, the traders are going to look at what banks have French debt, and they're going to short those banks. So you're looking at a banking crisis for Europe. On top of the fact that 70% on average of the pension funds must have government debt. So they need war, and this is what I've warned Washington about. They need war desperately, because if even that rumor starts on France, you're going to see the EU collapse. Right? You're talking about a banking crisis, a sovereign, wealth fund crisis. It's a mess. And then what did you have? I don't know if it's going to. They would have to be absolutely stupid to come out with this. But behind the closed doors, they're already talking about, we dumped $2.3 trillion worth of U.S. debt and force Trump to fund our war against Russia. I mean, forget it. I mean, they're insane. They're completely insane. Have European clients moving money out, moving their families out. It's pathetic.
What, so then in your view, what is the computer saying then? If Europe is, on this road to disaster, I was trying to think of like a song to correlate this with, Road to Nowhere, and the money is going to come from Europe and enter into the United States. What do you anticipate for this country over the next 12 months?
I would be careful with the first quarter next year. Europe is getting very desperate at this stage, and they may attempt to do some sort of a false flag, justify war with Russia ASAP. I think they're going to slap on capital controls, and they've already, as of November, if you try to leave the EU, you have to list all the accounts and money you have everywhere in the world. They will cancel the currency. They want to move to a digital currency. I think they could do it even by the first quarter of next year. Why? That would be absolute lockdown for capital, which is what they want to do. They'll probably outlaw Bitcoin, outlaw gold, stuff like that. It's one of the reasons I think silver's been taking off, because the fears are a little bit more that they will confiscate or restrict gold in Europe. They did that before. Europeans, to get around it, World War II, were buying gold stocks. They're probably going to cancel the currency. You already have countries like Spain. You can't take more than 3,000 euros out of your account without government permission. It's your money, supposedly, until they want it. You got Ursula over there talking about funding the war, taking unused assets from private people. Oh, you got a bunch of money in your savings account. Well, you're not using it. We will. Look, that's what set off the German hyperinflation. Germany couldn't meet the reparation payments, and they took basically 10% of your account in December 22, and then hyperinflation started in 23. They never learn from the past. They always say, well, this time it's different because I'm in charge. Yet they make the same stupid mistakes always. So I would expect them to cancel the currencies, the paper currencies, sooner than later. And as soon as they'll probably do it with the digital currency. And okay, no more paper currency. Everything's now digital. You want to wire money out of the country? Good luck. The problem, look, it's even if you look at the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln said any money you owe to a Confederate company, you have to turn over to the U.S. Treasury. They stole the money. And that's basically what you're looking at. It doesn't look too good. I think 26 is going to be a very interesting year.
What about, do you envision some of those things you've talked about Europe? Do you see that happening here? Capital controls, for example, or because, and before you answer that, it appears that, Trump, this administration is attempting to reindustrialize the United States. So they want, they don't want this money flowing out anywhere else. So do you see capital controls?
I don't think so. I think he's not going to do something like that. And I don't think that the capital it seems to be pointed still to the United States at this stage in the game. However, JP Morgan moving its gold desk to Singapore. Why? Most likely what they're concerned about is that Europe puts in capital controls and decrees that a European can't buy anything in the United States, and that they will be subject, U.S. would say they have to enforce those regs. You can deal with an American, but not a European. And so I think that's why they're moving their gold desk to Singapore, to get away from any potential regulations.
What do you think the United States, for the next 12 months, for regular people, for next year, going to be more difficult a year from now for them?
The volatility is definitely going to go up. I think the precious metals may back off, but continue higher eventually into like 27. Next year is going to be a very volatile year. And I think you're going to see the problems coming to roost from both Japan as well as Europe at this stage in the game. But all those people that say, oh, the dollar going to crash, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Take a look outside this country. Oh, the dollar's going to crash. Where do you want to put your money? In euros? Good luck. Well, maybe you want Japanese yen. What else do you want? Canada is probably going to split. I have been working to some degree with Alberta. I did a post on this explaining, look, it's not about creating a currency. It's about the economics. If they put a maximum of 10% corporate tax, no income tax, and I said, look, this is completely plausible. I live here in Florida. No income tax. We got a balanced budget. It's, everything's fine. The governor's, basically looking at removing property taxes from homestead. And people that you live in your house, that's it, and that's your house, period. They can't get rid of you. They can't. If you owe $10 million, they want to sue you, fine. They can't take your house until you die. And you can only have one homestead. You can't do it on, you own 4 or 5 houses and say it's all homestead. You can't do that. But Look, these things are certainly possible. You look at the, the blue states, California, instead of saying, gee, why is Tesla, Apple leaving? All right, let's punish them for doing so. Let's put an exit tax. There's no reform with these people. I'm in power. It's going to be the way I say, period. They're dictators. They pretend to be elected, but this is absolute BS. I lived in New Jersey. My father's old law partners said, look, if you die here, tell your family to drag your body across the river before they tell anybody. You pay 50%, while you're living, and when you die, they want the other 40%. It's just ruthless. In Australia, these lefties, well, it's not fair. You're leaving your child $1 million. Somebody else is only leaving them 10,000. That's not fair. You die, everything should go to the state. This is the way they think. I was up in BC and I was shocked. A politician actually said, everything you earn is theirs. They decide how much you're allowed to have. This is Europe. This is Canada. It's horrible. There's no respect for individuality. They don't understand anything.
What, I was trying to look to see if the Fed came out with their announcement yet, since we've been talking.